I know there are going to be some people who are going to write into the show complaining that I'm not debating you to a point where I arm wrestle you down.
Well, I hope not.
Well, you probably beat me at arm wrestling.
Well, I'm 58 years old now. I don't do that, I've been actually out of wrestling, it's hard to believe, for me, 20 years.
Yeah. Well, but let's talk about some of the other things that you want to bring to the public's attention. Privatization seems to be a major concern of yours. What bothers you about it?
A privatization? I like it to a point, but I'm seeing it. Well, one of the things is I'm seeing the military become privatized with mercenaries. We now have more mercenaries deployed overseas in Iraq than we do actual soldiers. Blackwater, things of that nature. I don't like that because they don't fall under the Uniform Code of Military Justice. These are cowboys out there with guns. And like you said, Bremer gave a pass to Blackwater. And they committed some murders over there, out-and-out murders, I believe.
Well, the whole thing accelerated during the Bush years. Have things improved as far as you're concerned now that Barack Obama is in the White House?
Well, not really, because Barack Obama campaigned and said he'd get us out of these wars. And he seems to be escalating them. Granted, he shifted it back to Afghanistan. Well, why wasn't Afghanistan taken care of initially? Well, we got sidetracked into Iraq. And that's what made me question 9/11, because when I found out Bush was going to go into Iraq, I sat back and thought, wait a minute. These 19 hijackers that they claim hit the World Trade Center, there wasn't one Iraqi among them. Well, to me, that's like Pearl Harbor. If the Japanese attack us at Pearl Harbor, well, then let's go get Korea. After all, they're Asian, too.
Well, there are people who feel that no matter what had happened, we would have wound up going into Iraq because there had already been talk among some of the people in the Bush administration before he was elected about going to Iraq.
Yeah, and in fact, the day after 9/11, with all that testimony, remember when they told Richard Clark the very next day, get us Iraq. We want a connection to Iraq. And I've also learned that a lot of the torturing that went on in Guantanamo was they wanted to try to torture guys so they could back up the fact of weapons of mass destruction and ties to al-Qaeda. They wanted to torture people so they'd admit to that, which, of course, was completely false.
When you were running for governor, did you have the same attitudes about what was going on with government?
Not really. I ran for government. The main issue for me of running at the time was I was actually doing talk radio, and I kind of backed myself in the corner, and you know that if you lose your credibility, you're dead. And
you mean you offered yourself up as a candidate and the people took you seriously?
Well, what happened was this. If you think back to the late 90s, our economy was flourishing. Great. Well, we had budget surpluses where the legislature sets a budget, and because the economy's so powerful and the taxing system was there, they were bringing in multi-millions of dollars more than what they budgeted for. Well, it happened the year before I ran for governor. They spent it. And I was outraged. I said, wait a minute, they had a budget. Live within your budget like everyone else. That money should be returned to the people if you took in too much. So I basically ran on that. And during the great economy, I actually gave back 3 years in a row rebate checks to the people of Minnesota where we reimbursed them for that additional money that the government got.
Well, what were they spending the money on? Usually they're spending it on programs that go to the public, aren't they?
Exactly. But the point is when the economy then suffers and you go into a recession, you're still left with these new programs that they created that now have to be paid for. And what does new programming do? It creates bigger, and bigger government. I think our government is far too big today. And something worries me, and it just came out again in the USA Today paper, when they tell you an employee for the federal government makes more money on average than a person in the private sector. Something is gravely wrong with that. When a government employee can make more money than the private sector, because let's remember, it's the private sector that supports the government.